There's a claim that often circulates online, especially in atheist circles, that the Quran is full of contradictions. You'll find videos, articles, and Reddit threads laying out what seems like a compelling case that the Quran contradicts itself in various ways. These are usually presented as irrefutable proof that the Quran can't be the Word of God. But today, we're going to slow things down. Let's walk through these claims together. Not with blind faith, and not with dismissiveness. Atheists often argue that the Quran contradicts itself when it comes to drinking. In Surah Al-Baqarah, it says there's some benefit in wine, but its harm outweighs its benefit. The Quran was revealed over 23 years, and during that time, people had deeply embedded habits, drinking being one of them. In Surah Yunus, verse 92, it says that God preserved Pharaoh's body as a sign for future generations. That's why in museums today, in Egypt, we can actually see what's claimed to be the mummified body of Pharaoh from that era. Different verses mention different origins. Surah Al-Alaq says a clinging clot. Surah Al-Hajjah mentions sounding clay. Surah Al-Mamunan talks about a drop of fluid. And Surah Al-Anbiya says, "We made every living thing from water." So, which one is it? Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256 says, "There is no compulsion in religion." But other verses, especially those revealed in times of war, speak about fighting those who oppose the faith. Doesn't this mean there's a contradiction? Surah Al-Baqarah says the earth was created first, while Surah An-Nazi'at says the heavens came first. So which is it? Whether that's the exact individual or not is debated, but the idea of a drowned ruler's body being preserved is not far-fetched. But another person might say, we did the roof design first, then worked on the foundation. Neither are lying. They're just speaking from different perspectives. The Quran wasn't written as a philosophy textbook. It speaks in a style that's poetic, thematic, and deeply rooted in its linguistic and cultural environment. It repeats ideas, not to contradict, but to emphasize. It invites you to engage with it, not like a passive reader, but like a partner in a conversation. It shifts between topics, not randomly, but with purpose. It speaks to a real audience over real time, responding to real events. The Quran is full of contradictions. Ask them, which contradiction? Let's read it together. Slowly, carefully, because sometimes what looks like a contradiction is really just a lack of understanding. But maybe the contradiction isn't in the Quran. Maybe it's in how we approach it. Do we give it the same nuance we give other texts? Do we read it in translation only and judge it instantly? Or do we take time to understand how it was meant to be heard? The Quran's references to creation follow a similar pattern, sometimes emphasizing order, sometimes focusing on detail. The word thumma, often used in these verses, can mean then, but not always in a strict chronological sense. Sometimes it means a change in subject or a shift in focus. In classical Arabic, it doesn't always mean first this then that in a timeline. Scholars like Al-Razi and Al-Qurtubi explained this centuries ago. Even if you're an atheist, ask yourself, why does a book from 1400 years ago, written in a desert society, continue to provoke this level of scrutiny and debate? Why does it remain central to the lives of over 1 billion people? For over 14 centuries, they've responded to criticisms, not just with theology, but with philosophy, linguistics, and science. Why do its words still shape lives, politics, art, and ethics, even among non-Muslims? The Quran can describe events in overlapping layers, like zooming in and out of different parts of the process. The verse "there is no compulsion in religion" is a general principle. It means you cannot force someone to believe. Belief has to be sincere. You can't make someone a Muslim at gunpoint and expect that to count. But during times of war, like in Surah At-Tawbah, the Quran addresses the reality of defending the early Muslim community from hostile tribes who were actively trying to wipe them out. Those verses aren't about forcing people into faith. They're about survival and sovereignty. And they're always time-bound. often linked with specific treaties being broken or aggressive actions being taken. Think of how a scientist might describe a human being. You could say we're made of carbon, or cells, or DNA, or water. But if that country is invaded, it might say, we will fight back against the enemy. Does that mean they no longer respect freedom? No. It means they're responding to a different context. All would be correct, just at different levels. The Quran does the same. From dust, referring to our elemental origin. From a drop, our biological beginning. From a clot, the embryo stage. Each description reflects a different stage of human development. They don't contradict, they complement each other. And it aligns exactly with the Quran's words. This day we shall save you in your body, so that you may be a sign for those who come after you. Not will save your life, but your body. Yet in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 40, it says Pharaoh was drowned. So was he drowned or saved? Islam didn't come down as a rigid list of rules from day one. It transformed a society gradually. First, it told people alcohol has more harm than good. Then, it warned against being drunk during prayer, a direct problem affecting the seriousness of worship. And finally, it said to avoid it altogether. This is not inconsistency. This is evolution. It's how real change happens. Imagine trying to ban cigarettes overnight in a society addicted to them, cold turkey. It wouldn't work. So Islam dealt with it through a process of weaning. In Surah An-Nisa, it tells believers not to approach prayer while intoxicated. And later, in Surah Al-Maida, it outright says, intoxicants and gambling are abominations of Satan's handiwork, so avoid them, but with reason, history, and a real effort to understand what's actually being said. Let's start by asking, what do people mean when they say contradictions? Are they talking about logical contradictions? Like saying something is both true and false at the same time? Or are they pointing to what looks like inconsistencies? Things that don't add up unless you understand more context. One of the most commonly cited contradictions is the number of days of creation. In Surah Al-Araf, chapter 7, verse 54, it says, Indeed, your Lord is Allah, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Till you realize that the 4 days in verse 10 for the mountains and provisions are not additional to the 2 days of creating the earth, but inclusive of them. Meaning, the earth and its provisions were completed in 4 days total, not 6 plus 4. This interpretation isn't some modern invention. It's what early commentators like Ibn Kathir and Al-Tabari wrote centuries ago. So once you understand the language and structure of Arabic, which often allows for a kind of elliptical way of counting, the contradiction vanishes. Pretty straightforward. But then people point to Surah Fussilat, chapter 41, verses 9 to 12. If you read those verses quickly, it seems like it adds up to 8 days. First, 2 days for the earth, then 4 days for the mountains and provisions, and then 2 more days for the heavens. 2 plus 4 plus 2, 8. So, contradiction. It sounds like it. Let's look at another common example. The question of alcohol. So which is it? Is alcohol okay in moderation or completely forbidden? This isn't a contradiction. It's a progression. Here's another example atheists bring up. The fate of Pharaoh. The answer lies in the phrasing. Pharaoh did drown. The Quran says it clearly, but his body was preserved, not his life. Another apparent contradiction atheists point out is about whether humans are created from a clot, dust, water, or a drop of fluid. Again, if we look carefully, this isn't a contradiction. It's a multi-layered description. Now, one of the most emotional and difficult topics people raise is whether there's compulsion in religion. Let's slow down. A modern analogy might help. A country might say, we respect freedom of speech. Another example. Atheists often say the Quran says the earth was created before the heavens in one verse. And in another, it says the heavens were created before the earth. Here, it's important to understand how Arabic and the Quran uses sequencing. Think of it like this. If you asked someone how a house was built, they might say, "First we laid the foundation, then built the walls, then installed the roof." Let's zoom out now. Most claims of contradictions in the Quran boil down to two things: either a misunderstanding of language and context, or a projection of Western logic onto a Semitic text. And this brings us to something bigger. The Quran itself challenges readers to ponder, not just to believe blindly, but to reflect. That's why Muslim scholars don't just memorize the Quran. They study its grammar, its historical backdrop, its narrative flow, its legal implications. Atheists are right to ask questions. Questions are good. Doubt isn't a bad thing. It's part of the journey. So the next time someone says, "and maybe," just maybe, there's more to this book than meets the eye.